This is human cough aerodynamics, where we have done it in our lab in VSSE, and it's an experimental study. Um, yeah, so a little bit about myself before. I am from the 2014 to 2018 batch of IIST, and I worked with Ramanan sir for my final year project on low thrust transfer, optimizing low thrust transfers. Okay, so we can begin the presentation. So we'll look at the motivation for why we are looking into human coughs, and then some of the challenges we faced while doing our work, and then we'll actually look at what we have done, and then we'll see some of the results, inferences, whatever we have achieved from this study. So the motivation is basically the COVID-19 pandemic, and main thing is experimental studies. This is I've taken this from some literature that most of the particles that are exhaled while coughing are very fine, and they can pass through masks both ways. Of course, most of the particles are filtered, but a significant fraction can still pass through. And then these are advected by the airflow that is there. So once they are advected by the airflow, they can get carried quite far away. So that is one motivation. The second thing is near field information is readily available, that is close to the mouth. People have done a lot of studies, including experimental studies, but how the airflow behaves once it moves very far away from the mouth is something that is quite lacking in literature. So that's what we studied. And there is a number called Stokes number, where it is the ratio of, it's a non-dimensional number, which is the time for a particle in a flow to change direction to the time for the flow to change direction. It can be direction or it can be the velocity itself. So as the particle size gets smaller and smaller, the Stokes number becomes smaller. And once the Stokes number is below, let's say, point 1 or point not 1, then it means that all these particles, the aerosol particles, droplets, they more or less just get advected by air like a passive scalar quantity. So with that motivation, we thought of looking a little deeper into how the airflow from coughs actually behaves. So in this study, we are not looking at the droplets per se, but we're looking at the background airflow, which the cough produces and then carries these particles. So we look at some of the challenges that are there in visualizing cough airflows using experimental techniques. So here we have used Schlieren imaging, which is quite sensitive. And the reason why we chose Schlieren imaging is it's very non-intrusive. It's absolutely non-intrusive. We don't have to introduce any sort of tracer into the flow. We don't have to put any sort of probes. So it will be very natural. But there is a problem with this. What Schlieren imaging does is it images the density gradients in the flow. So if you consider a human exhaled airflow, our body temperature may be in the range of 37 degrees Celsius, and the atmosphere in Trivandrum may be around 25 to 30 in the summer, 35 in the summer. So the density gradient is very low. We have a very minute temperature difference, and that causes a small density difference. But because that is very weak, if we use conventional Schlieren setup that are used for high-speed aerodynamic applications, that are these they're called Z-type Schlieren because it's something like a vague Z shape here. So the testing area is somewhere in the middle. So the cough, if you introduce a breath or a cough here, you can see images like these. So this is something called a single pass setup. So what happens is there is a source and there is a camera here or an imaging plane here, and the testing happens here. So the light passes through the testing region only one time. One more thing, feel free to stop me in the middle whenever anyone wants to ask any questions. Yeah, so with that said, yeah, the
Okay.
light passes. Yes.
So Vaduna, can we go to the first slide? I'm not so. So when you say near field means what distances are we talking about?
Within 1 foot, basically.
Okay. So
So yeah, near field, when I say near field here, I'm referring to 1 foot at the max 2 feet. 0.6 meter is roughly 2 feet. Yeah. But far field, when I'm talking about far field, I am referring to around 2 meters, 1.5 to 3 meters also.
Okay. And so you're saying far field is lacking, but
Yeah,
now far field will be much more dependent on the environment, basically, correct?
correct. That is
And that's
true.
why it is
So
lacking, huh?
yeah, that is true. So what we have done here is we have done the experiments in a controlled environment with no cross flow, no ventilation, which is somewhat representative of unventilated airspaces like a moderate sized office, classroom maybe. If you haven't switched on the fans to very high speeds, or if you have the AC running in low. So the thing is, once we get this information, what people are doing is they're using computational models where they introduce a ventilation, a cross flow, or a parallel stream, or a counter stream of air, and then the airflow is suitably modified. So that is the way people are doing work in this field here.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, Padmanabha, one more.
Yes, sir.
So, is there any data on this particle size distribution?
Yes, so basically what I'm showing here in this slide is an experimental measurement. It varies a lot from person to person. So you can see in the what they mentioned, coughing, including outlier removed. So some people produce a huge volume of droplets. Some people produce somewhere close to the mean. So the blue is the average without the outlier, and the outlier is the average results. I mean, the green is the outlier with the average result. This is not our data. This is data which is already done in literature, and people have been looking into this from 1990s onward.
Okay, this outlier means what is that?
Okay, so there are some people who we are calling super spreaders and things like that. So they typically tend to produce a large volume of droplets. So the outlier was basically in this study, the outlier was a very athletic person who was able to cough very forcefully. So that's why he was an outlier compared to the rest of the individuals. And that's why, but just by including that one person in their results, they were getting such a skewed distribution, which is it's not very relevant to our study, but the main point is that droplet distribution is seen here. Most of the droplets are within 10 microns, actually within 2 microns itself.
Okay, okay.
Does that answer your question,
Yeah,
sir?
yeah, fine.
Okay. So I'll go back to this slide. So the first problem that we faced was this is a very readily available setup. So especially in VSSC, where we do some amount of work on aerodynamics, we use this quite frequently. And here we can see that I am breathing here. This is myself, and I'm breathing. Please ignore this other protrusion here. It is something else which is not relevant to this, but you're hardly able to see anything here with a single pass setup. So what we did was we had to make another kind of Schlieren setup, which I will shortly talk about, called a double pass Schlieren setup, where instead of the light traversing only once through the test section, we can get it to traverse twice. So because of that, the sensitivity automatically doubles. So with that, we were able to get good results. So this is just a regular breath, and we are able to see it very clearly. So disclaimer, these two images were shot at 60 frames per second with auto exposure from a regular DSLR type of camera. So once we implemented, so we'll get into the double pass Schlieren setup that we have implemented here. Actually, this is nothing new per se. People have been using this, especially from Penn State University. There is a very famous professor called Gary Settles, and he has done quite a lot of qualitative work on imaging the airflow from different situations. He's a modern day pioneer in Schlieren imaging. So he has done a lot of work, and you can see his results here with his setup. And he has a 1 meter diameter parabolic mirror. We don't have a 1 meter mirror. We only have a 300 diameter mirror, but we have a spherical mirror, and that has an advantage compared to his setup. So because it is parabolic, he requires something called a corrector lens, which introduces a spherical aberration for this setup to work. But since we are using a spherical mirror, it already has its own aberration, and we don't need that. So here, why it is called double passes, there is a light source. It passes through once through the test section. It hits the mirror, bounces back, and then there is a beam splitter which reflects part of it into a camera. So that's why it's called a double pass, because it traverses through the test section twice. And you can see our results from my lab. So qualitatively, they look similar. Another thing is Gary Settles in his results is using 1 microsecond exposure time on his camera, because he has a larger size mirror and a more powerful lamp. So we have a a less powerful lamp and a smaller mirror. So the amount of light that we are able to collect is low. So this is around 25 microseconds exposure time. And we could estimate the sensitivity based on literature just by comparing with literature. So to produce a 10% change in image contrast, roughly half an arc second deviation in light rays is probably sufficient. This is not an exact number. This is only an ad hoc estimate. So now we'll go to some of the work that we have done. Initially, I'll show some qualitative results. So we have imaged several coughs, and we have performed the tests without mask, with regular surgical masks, and with N95 masks. We have also done many other kind of situations also. And for this purpose, illustrating these images, we have taken the snapshots 40 milliseconds after initiating the coughs. And these images are shot at 1500 frames per second using a high-speed camera. So you can see without mask, the leftmost panel, the cough airflow has traversed to some extent. Then with a surgical mask, it has traversed to maybe only around a half, or I don't know, 1/3 or a half. Then with N95 masks, it is even lower. So we can clearly see qualitatively that masks are doing something, and this is in line with our understanding. So qualitatively, we have seen something, but we also want to look at some quantitative information, which we'll get to later on. So one thing is, this is all with,
one
yes,
more.
sir.
These masks, how do they categorize actually? This N90, this ratings and all. What is the basis for
Oh,
that?
those are basically particle filtration efficiencies. So what happens is, if you have a higher particle filtration efficiency, typically you have to use a more number of layers and a closer weave in the fabric. So that causes a greater resistance to the airflow as a byproduct. So naturally, these kind of masks which have higher particle filtration efficiencies, they also tend to limit the airflow much more than regular disposable thin masks or cloth masks that we are using. The weave in the fabric is also looser, so that produces less pressure drop across the flow.
So this tells about like the minimum size of the particle that it can block, or is it something like that?
Yes, sir. I am not very clear about the ratings, but it is basically something like 95% of the particles above a certain in a certain diameter range are guaranteed to be filtered, and typically the efficiencies are much better. But these are just a nomenclature, which I am not very clear about myself, sir.
Okay, okay.
But
But
see,
it is
one
to
thing,
do. Yes, sir.
this aspect I have looked at. When the more efficient mask is there, the person who is copying himself will be inhaling, taking all the droplets himself. Whether that will cause any more problems, severe problems to him, is there any study on that?
So that actually, as far as I have heard from medical professionals, it is very unlikely that these things cause problems back to the same person who is wearing the mask. Uh, Ideally, masks are to be normal people who are wearing masks are using it in the sense of inhalation. That is, we don't want to breathe in contaminated air. So that way people are doing. But infected individuals, you would want to minimize the region of air that they would want to infect when they are coughing or breathing or talking.
Yeah, that's
So,
right.
so if an infected person breathes in his own air, it is not very likely to cause the situation. As far as I have been told, I don't really know that
Mhm.
factor.
Okay, fine. Yeah, fine. Yeah.
Okay. So,
So also, Padmana,
yes.
this effectiveness will be also like the direction dependent, right? So it will
Uh,
also blocking whether it's going out or coming in. It will.
Correct, correct. That is true, sir. Inhalation is actually very difficult to visualize with Schlieren imaging because we are taking in the ambient air and there is very little density gradient. Uh, so the effectiveness in inhalation, usually people have done it. People have modeled that by considering a type of sink, placing a sink where the nose is. So they model it as a sink because it is nearly potential flow only, which is governing the behavior of airflow during inhalation. So those kind of studies are there
Okay.
where they see the kind of volume of air where inhalation is happening.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, we'll go to the next slide. So all before going to the next slide, we are the point is here we are only seeing still here it is only because the mirror is 300 in dia. We are only getting a small field of view. We can't really say what happens as it goes far away. So one very simple observation was we don't have large field of view. Only 300 mirrors are available. So what we can do is we can stand away from the imaging area and cough from some measured offset distances. This is a very simple, obvious thing, but to our surprise, nobody had actually done this before. We were not able to find literature about this. So that's why we decided to go ahead and take some experimental measurement. So what we do is we stand away from that imaging area and we cough from some known offset distances. If after some time airflow is visible in the field of view, then it means that yes, airflow can reach this distance. And that means we have to repeat the experiment by increasing the offset distance gradually. If it is not visible, that means either the cough has traveled, mostly it means that the cough is not able to go to that location. And then after repeating it a few times and once we are confident, we can end the trial. So some very initial results here based on myself are that without a mask, the coughs from me are able to go almost up to 3 meters, 2.5 meters definitely, 3 meters if I cough with high intensity. Then with a disposable regular surgical mask, it is roughly half the distance in my case. And then with an N95 mask, it is not exceeding around 1 foot. So those are the kind of very preliminary qualitative results that we have. Okay, this is slightly quantitative, but we have done better. But this is very preliminary results that we obtained. So then we decided to increase the number of test subjects and see what kind we get. But before that, we did different situations. So we see 9 image panels here. So this is with first panel is without mask, which first 3 panels we have seen before, and I've marked the outline of the air boundary of the thing here, and all these images are at 40 milliseconds after initiating the cough. So then you can see with a single hand covering the mouth at 40 milliseconds, it's something like this, somewhere in between, something like a surgical mask in effectiveness, but there is significant leakage at the top, bottom. Then typically people cough with 2 hands cupped in front of their mouth. That is a very common method of coughing. And you can see there is because our fifth finger is little finger is very small compared to our ring finger. There is a gap that is formed, and that leakage is very clearly visible here. Okay, not as clearly as the other things because it's a small leak, but nonetheless it is there. Then with a folded handkerchief, we can see what happens. Then if we have a surgical mask and we put our hand on top of that, we see something like this at 40 milliseconds. Then very commonly people recommend using the elbow. But if let's say someone is wearing a t-shirt or a half shirt and the elbow is just bare skin is there, then this is the kind of airflow that we observe because the bare elbow is not able to form a proper seal against the airflow from the mouth and the nose. Whereas if we are wearing a loose long sleeve, a full sleeved shirt, the situation is completely different here. So I won't give any recommendations, but these are just observations that we made. Now, if we look at fully evolved profiles, that is at the maximal extent, okay, of course, without mask, with surgical mask, N95 mask, it's kind of just like a jet. It looks just like a jet. but so that's why I won't show those. But with the other situations, single hand, these are how they look like qualitatively. With Schlieren images, we have done this study, and that in this case, that jet is still persisting. There is some gap here, and there is a jet going out. And you can see with elbow without sleeve, there is significant forward motion. But when the sleeve is covering the elbow, it is more or less stopped it in terms of horizontal travel. There is some vertical rise because of buoyancy. So then we observed a very interesting phenomena in some adult human male test subjects, actually two adult human male test subjects, that is a periodic pulsing phenomena in the cough. So if you look at the three, let's say after initiating the cough, this is at 40 milliseconds. So after, let's say, I don't know, maybe 100 milliseconds, a sort of jet profile has developed. But what we observed was periodically there was some structure, some sort of a coherent structure that is being ejected from the mouth, and it is advecting downstream. So at some time t naught, there is a first pulse, and then at time t naught plus 7.2 milliseconds, there is a second pulse, and there is a third pulse at 14.4 milliseconds. So at the same location. And if we look at 3.6 milliseconds, over here, close to the mouth where this coherent structure is there is nothing. In fact, if you see the video, we can clearly see it convecting downstream, and at 3.6 milliseconds, it is somewhere over here, and it has slightly changed in angle. So this is actually a toroidal mode instability, not instability, a toroidal mode oscillation in the jet due to variations in the mass flow rate caused by the vocal cord constricting and relaxing. So this was seen in only two test subjects who had a hoarse sounding cough. And one thing is, if you look at the estimated frequency, it's around 138 hertz from the images or the video. And from a mobile app, okay, these images are my cough. From a mobile app, if I record my voice over and over again, after multiple trials, the peak in my voice spectrum is around 120 to 140 hertz. So there is a very strong correlation. We are yet to establish that is indeed the causation, but it is more or less true. And this also we know how a vortex. This is actually a sort of a vortex ring structure. If we take the velocity profile, there is and we compute the vorticity, we will see that it is actually a vortex ring. And this is a well-known fact in literature that a vortex ring can be easily generated by a piston and cylinder orifice, or if we have a tube and we impulsively start something, we get a vortex ring due to the roll-up of the shear layer. So this is an interesting phenomena that we observed, not very relevant to COVID-19, but it can potentially have use in diagnosing some cough-related conditions, some sort of respiratory ailments that people have. These kind of coherent structures that we observe in flow can change based on the physiological changes that a person experiences. So now I'll go to the next slide, which is actually the crux of our work, which was estimation of distance velocity profiles. So we did this manually. We could not automate the image processing because the data is very noisy, and at least I was not able to do it. Maybe someone who is more experienced with image processing could have done it, but nonetheless, we have done it manually. So you can see here, I'm standing around 1.9 meter away, actually 2 meters away from the center of the mirror. So this is around 1.9 meters, the wave front at some time t naught. 50 milliseconds later, the wave front has moved by around 23 mm, around 1 inch. And then 100 milliseconds later, it has moved around 2 inch, 46 mm. So this, basically by seeing how the wavefront moves in the field of view of the mirror, we are able to find the distance time profile over a small distance window. That is, we take some window like this much distance, and then we see how much it has moved. Then we linearly square fit a profile at distance time, and we take the slope of that to get the velocity at that distance. So that is basically almost all the experimental data reduction that we have done. Now we will look at the data, and we have done it with
Padmanabha,
5.
hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, this any correction has been done for the possible distortion because your beam path is not parallel, no?
Correct. We have done that, sir. I have actually said, so the mirror is 300 mm in dia, and the standoff distance, okay, not the standoff, the distance from the mirror, where it's an f/10 mirror, so the focal length is 3 meters, and the center of radius of curvature is 6 meters. So the path this light is actually this is a 6 meter sphere, where, or a 6 meter sphere where we are doing our imaging, and we are only 100 mm away from the mirror. So this is 300 mm, and this is around 295 mm. So that much distortion we have to account for. It's not exact. An a priori estimate of this is around, we estimate that due to this non-parallel nature, we think that the error introduced may be within 2%. So because of the f/10 nature, the very long focal length optics that we have. Actually, if Professor Settles had tried that, he would have faced more issues because his is only f/4. So that is a little problematic. We are having an f/10 mirror. So in some ways, even though we have a smaller diameter mirror, it is better in certain other aspects. I hope that is an answer to your question.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so we have actually considered the non-parallel nature of light in this situation, and the effect is estimated to be within 2%, but still we have used the actual value. We can't exactly guarantee that it is only 295 mm because one person may slightly be here or there. So, but we took this as a mean value, and we saw how much error it introduces. 2% in velocity we estimate. So, okay. Yeah, so now we are actually plotting the distance velocity profiles in actual units, that is meters per second versus meter. This is velocity, y-axis is velocity, x-axis is distance. And we have 5 test subjects that we did, 4 male and 1 female. And we can see that there is, from one person to another, there is a very wide spread. So this first panel is without masks. So there is it is very different from person to person, and we should expect that because each person individual is very different. Similar story with surgical mask, and same story with N95 mask. And we also got a 3 sigma uncertainty in velocity estimation, and that is actually much less than 5% because uh, we are using an image based technique here, and the wave front is typically smaller than, is around 5 pixels in width. It is, the wave front is quite sharply resolved. So that's why we were able to do this study with a fairly good amount of accuracy in the y-axis, that is in the velocity. But once we are standing away from the mirror, the test subject is not restrained in any fashion. So the test subject can move forward or back by plus minus maybe 2.5 to 5 centimeters. And that's why we are putting error bars here in the horizontal direction to account for uncertainty. But actually we took care, we measured how much is the standoff distance from the mirror, center of the mirror. So, but still for the sake of being conservative with our approach to our data, we gave these kind of error bars. So that we have seen. Now, what we did was, we look, if there are any questions, I can answer or I'll go ahead.
Yes, Padmanabh, I have one question.
Yeah.
So here each point actually only represents a single cuff by a single subject. Is it?
Okay, so with respect to N95 masks, the third panel, I should have clarified that. N95 mask, the complete cough is contained in the field of view of the mirror. So all these data points are from one cough only per individual. So let's say we take the black curve. This is one individual's one cough. That's why we have a very nice looking data here. Whereas if we look at surgical mask or N95 mask, each data point is a different cough from a different individual, from one. So black curve, subject one. So this is one cough, this first point. Second point is another cough. Third is another cough, another cough. So that's why even though these are completely different coughs, they're still falling on the same. If we draw a trend line, it is actually an exponential trend line which we have drawn here. It is quite consistent, which was very surprising to us. And not just for one person, almost everyone demonstrates this kind of consistency. This may be because we are doing voluntary coughs from individuals. In reality, sometimes it may be very weak, sometimes it may be very strong, but voluntary coughs represent some sort of a mean value which we are using for the study. We can't obviously take a sick person and make that person cough in a natural type of way. So that's why, yes, I hope that is an answer.
Yes. So let us say, I do this experiment for a single person, for a single calf. So I will
Mhm.
get this wavefront velocities at all the distances for that particular calf, right?
Okay, so if the test subject is standing at a particular distance, we
Uh,
can only image what the mirror sees.
yes.
So in
Okay. Okay.
so only at that distance. So this, let's say if we are taking 1 meter, it means that the test subject is 1 meter away from the center of the mirror, and only when the cough arrives at the mirror we can see it. So we don't get the complete profile because of the limitation in the field of view.
Yes. Correct.
So
Uh,
that's what makes this data all the more surprising to me, at least, that each data point, at least in the first two figures, is a repeated is a different cough, but still it is almost lying on similar trend lines, at least for one individual person. So now we'll look at the next slide where we have done some non-dimensionalization work, which actually all our professors in IIST keep telling us. And while I was a student, I never paid much attention. But only after seeing this, I realized the importance of what they were telling. That is, we are non-dimensionalizing the velocity with some reference velocity, and we are non-dimensionalizing the distance with the reference distance, with some reference distance. So here the reference velocity is actually the initial velocity of the cough. So V naught is basically the initial velocity as it is exiting the mouth. And the non-dimensionalized distance, or we call it a characteristic distance, is the distance at which the velocity of the cough wavefront drops to around 1% of the initial velocity. And this 1% is completely arbitrary. You can use 10% or 30% or whatever number suits your fancy. But for consistency, we have taken 1% because if you see this Stokes' first problem, or if we see some standard problems in fluid mechanics, we see that 1% number used quite a lot of times. So that's why we went with this 1% number. Though electrical engineers might want to use this 1 by E, the E is that base of the natural logarithm, but we go with this 1% for now. So we are seeing that all the data is collapsing onto a single curve, whether it is for all test subjects. So this is without mask, this is with surgical mask, and this is with N95 mask. If you look at the curve, it is the same. V by V naught is exponent of some constant number times x by d. So this is something which we observed, and we were very surprised by this. Kind of an exponential trend. This is actually a curve fit only, but we saw that a single curve fit, it's all collapsing to the same curve fit. So this indicates it may not be exponential, but at least all the data points are collapsing onto something which looks like an exponential at least. So this indicates that the flow is self-similar. That is one observation which we made, and this is to be expected also. Whether it's if you are thinking of a jet or a vortex ring or anything, a viscous vortex ring, they're all behavior. Their behavior is like a self-similar profile that we see. So we wanted to, we just didn't want to stop at some ad hoc exponential curve as an without explanation. We wanted to actually see why an exponential curve may be a good curve fit in this situation. So if you look at the result from an N95 mask, while wearing an N95 mask, the N95 mask disperses the airflow quite well. So individual vortex rings are visible. Actually, if you see with without mask, that there is a initial vortex ring that we initially observe, but then it sort of gets engulfed by the surrounding air that is passing along with it. But N95 mask, it disperses it quite well, and we can see individual vortex rings that are coming out. So this is the leading vortex ring. If you see the image, you can actually see the circulation there. And there are some analytical results for the velocity of propagation of viscous vortex ring. This is velocity versus time profile. So this was done by P.G. Safman way back in 1970s, actually 69, 68, 69, 70. And this is a first order estimate of our velocity versus time. And it looks like a plus b log t. And if you integrate this, we get something like x equal to some analytical value. And if you, this is the distance time profile, because with N95 mask, we get directly the distance time profile. The velocity distance profile, which we are having here, they are derived results. So we are looking at the raw data itself. And if we look at this form of expression, it is an excellent curve fit as long as the assumption behind this expression is valid. That is nu times t, which is a diffusive area square, or under root nu t is a diffusive length scale, is much less than your r square. That is the radius of the vortex ring that is there. And chi is your circulation. But circulation is very difficult to measure with Schlieren. We need to do some sort of particle image velocimetry sort of measurement. But nonetheless, we see that the distance time profile is very well represented by this. So in fact, if we can measure the circulation, which is the only unknown here, we can actually not do it by curve fitting, and we can actually use this formula directly. But we don't have a measurement for vorticity, circulation, and that's why we are going ahead with a curve fit. Now, if you look at the velocity distance, yes, sir.
Actually, this vortex ring, so it will expand as it goes forward.
Correct, right? Sir. Correct. So actually, this
rate of expansion, I think, connects it to the circulation. I think so. There is some relation, I think, between.
Yes, it is there, sir. So basically, what he has noticed, Safman himself has noticed, is that the expansion is the decay of the vorticity is a very slow exponential decay with time. So this there is a nu t by r square factor which comes, and as long as t is small, basically nu t by r square if it is small. If you go through his full paper, he has given an expression, an estimate for what this circulation is. So that has been included. But to first order, what he has noticed is as long as nu t is much lesser than r square, the circulation is almost a constant. Only at long time, basically, if you see for coughs, this nu t is on the order of 10 power minus 4 at t equal to 1 second for human coughs, and r square is in the order of 10 power, this is in the order of 10 power minus 5, and r square is in the order of 10 power minus 4. So for 1 second, this may be a good approximation, but 10 seconds, it may not be very good. I hope that addresses a concern. Or your point was something else?
No, means you are telling that circulation is an unknown parameter in that, right? So
yes, it is difficult to measure experimentally for us with Schlieren.
Yeah, so but what I was saying is that if you actually look at the rate at which this vortex expands,
okay,
I am telling from inviscid potential. Okay, if you consider a potential flow and a vortex ring,
yes,
so
sir.
its rate of expansion is connected to the strength of the vortex ring actually.
Yes, sir. That actually we did not do. I will. You're right. That point is very correct, sir.
But this assuming it is inviscid. Okay, I don't know whether viscosity.
That is actually your point. Is a point about inviscid flow is actually valid, sir. In this case, we can use inviscid flow results up to as long as nu t is much less than r square
Okay. Yeah. Fine. Fine.
for getting an estimate of the strength of vortex ring from the image, but we did not do that. That thought did not strike us, which is a good. It's a good observation. And okay, then if I'll resume. If we look at the velocity distance profile, I should speed up actually. If you look at the velocity distance profile, the exponential fits are shown here. I'm only showing 3 test subjects here because otherwise the graph looks very cluttered. So to avoid that, I'm showing 3 test subjects, but it is similar. So if we whether we use this profile, the analytical solution to this profile, or whether we use exponential profiles, they are quite close. So this gives us some confidence that whatever exact solution that we have, which are actually called Lambert W function or the product logarithm function, they are somewhat well approximated by exponential trends. The other advantage that we have is that ours is actually true for longer time also in the case of no mask and surgical masks, whereas this theory breaks down as soon as nu t becomes the order of r square. So, but nonetheless, there is some match with theoretical expectations, uh, at least two curve fits that are obtained from theoretical expectations. So this to some extent confirms the vortex ring dynamics aside from explicit visualization. So I can go to the next slide. So why does all this matter? What we have done is that there are studies which look some people they're trying to simulate coughs without test subjects using some sort of cough simulators or some kind of a mannequin model, some dummy models. They're using plastic models and they're impulsively starting a cough airflow, which is like generating vortex rings only. And people have seen in this is a paper from 1998, and they've seen that there is a number called the formation number of for vortex rings. And I won't go too much in depth, but you can read this paper. It is available in JFM, and here they show that this non-dimensional number has to be respected, and it depends on the piston stroke, that is L by D ratio of the piston that is used to generate these. So effectively in cough simulators, what they use is some kind of a piston cylinder arrangement itself. So if they don't keep the same thing, the flow structures that are generated are completely different. So that is one thing that is relevant to experimental people. The other thing is whatever we have generated here, these kind of non-dimensional results that people are starting to use in computational and analytical, semi-analytical models to find out how much volume is contaminated. They're using this work as an input to further studies, which was the intent of our investigation here. So that is why all this has some relevance. Then we look at some other things which we tried, but which we did not report. So we looked at this Schlieren image velocimetry technique, where we use the similar kind of image processing techniques that are used in particle image velocimetry to obtain a field, a velocity field. So here we can see that there is this. It's a region of high vorticity here, like a vortex ring, and that is moving relatively fast. So this is one particular flow field. Not everyone produces the same thing, and we can get these kind of results, which are not very good results because there was a lot of vibration in our lab due to there were a lot of other compressors and other machinery which were operating during when we were taking these images. So because of that, we did not get very good results, but nonetheless, we got some results which looked comparable to what is there in literature. Even Professor Settles has done this kind of work, but he has also got similar results. We were not able to improve upon that because we were using standard open source PIV algorithms. Maybe if someone writes something specialized to Schlieren image velocimetry, they may be able to do a better job. And the other thing is we were having at minimum 25 microsecond exposure time, because our light source was not that powerful, which it is quite powerful, but we require more light source to be able to do better. But this is some extra work which we looked at, and we got some encouraging results, and it can be taken up further if anyone is interested. Sorry. So we'll look at some inferences. So without mask, at least among the 5 test subjects in the age group that similar to mine, around 23 to 26 years of age. So without mask, around 1.5 to 3 meters. That's what we were able to see. With surgical mask, disposable surgical mask, around 0.5 meter to 1.5 meter. Maybe some better quality surgical masks, they will be able to do better. But with the masks that we had in our hand, this is what we got. And N95 masks, which were actually medical grade ones, around less than 1 foot. And we were able to, it disperses the flow so well that individual vortex rings were seen. And the other interesting phenomena which we observed was that there is a periodic flow, an axisymmetric mode in the jet. So that was what we saw, and it was corresponding to the natural frequency of at least the 2 test subjects in which we observed. It was corresponding, it had a correlation to the natural frequency of the vocal cords. Then the other thing which I want to really highlight is that the cough aerodynamics is universal, and we see that from non-dimensionalized results. And also we then, if we think back on whatever we have seen and look at some analytical results, it is in line with theoretical expectations. So if we are doing any sort of simulation, or if we are using scaled experimental models, we have to respect the aerodynamics, and that requires a more in-depth study of what literature is already there on methods to generate vortex rings. Okay, so with this, I will end my talk. I hope I didn't exceed my time. I am open to questions.
Yeah, Padmanabha,
Yes, sir.
you said droplets are reaching 1.5 meter when you are using surgical mask. But whether those droplets will have active viruses in that, is there any thing? Is there anything related to density of that, or any correlation is there?
Yes. Actually, sir, so this study is looking at only the airflow. There are other studies which use results from studies like this, whether it is experimental or computational. They take these studies as the background airflow, which is convecting drops, and then they do simulations. In fact, they track the particle, they model the particle using some drag coefficient, and they see how far it goes. They also include the effect of gravity. So all the larger droplets, they settle down, but very fine aerosolized particles, they are, in fact, what happens is the particle size even becomes smaller because of evaporation. So only the virus the crystallized virus nucleus will be left behind, and that will be even smaller, around 0.1 microns. So those actually are more or less carried up to the maximum extent of the flow, and they're capable of staying in air for about 15 minutes to a couple of hours before they settle down due to gravity. So that people have studied.
Fine. Suppose we are seeing the market that 3-layered cotton mask what we are using. So where does it stand? Whether it is in between your surgical and N95, or close to N95?
So, sir, in terms of particle filtration efficiency, from what I've heard from other people, is that it is about similar to a surgical mask. But in terms of airflow, it is in between N95 and surgical mask.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Good study. Yeah, it's a good study. Yes. Very interesting.
Thank you.
So are there any other audience questions? Okay, then let me ask a childish question. So
Sure, sir.
How does one, so what kind of cough are we talking about here? Is it,
okay.
I can simulate multiple types of coughs, right?
We told our test subjects to do it as naturally as they feel. Of course, as you said, there is no real way to control this because it is a biological thing. But we told them to cough naturally the way they cough, and we told them to do little higher intensity if possible. We also asked them to do their natural and higher intensity values, and we took whatever naturally they produced typically. That is what we took. But your point is very valid that an individual will produce lot of different types of coughs, and these can at best represent some nominal baseline level, or maybe towards the higher, stronger level. When people are sick, they may cough with more intensity. So,
Continuously also.
yes, sir. So the other problem is, as Ramanan sir just mentioned, we did not do continuous coughing. This is an individual cough, and then we wait for the airflow to dissipate, because otherwise the next cough may get influenced by the previous cough's airflow.
Yeah.
So, but there are studies which also look at repeated coughs. So, because some individuals, they don't cough just one time, they cough two times. So, people have looked into that, as you have said, sir. People have looked into a lot of things. Actually, not recently also. People have started looking into this coughing business right from 2000s.
Okay. So sort of one more non-technical question, So,
Yes.
uh, so we are in academia, so I think, all our labs, it will be quite easy to sort of, pick up this problem. And if you ask Satish or Vinod, they would be very happy to provide the lab and the whole setup. So I'm
Yes.
wondering how was your experience in, proposing this project and then getting the lab time and setting up everything, because I think I'm assuming the lab would be doing, other stuff also, right?
Okay, that answer I'll, because we are all IIS. Okay, sir, this you can please not put in this answer you please cut out from the recording. Uh,
Okay, maybe then we don't want the answer. It's fine then.
okay, but it's okay, sir. Basically in my setting I had to write a request to my division head, my boss, and he just had to approve it. And because it was COVID, we had some old mirror. In fact, I'll share the screen again. Uh, if you look at this, if you look at this slide, you can see this mirror here. I hope you're able to see.
Yeah.
So the left, this mirror here, this was actually a mirror which was imaging through a wind tunnel, a hypersonic wind tunnel. And this is actually something that is there in the test section, the projection, the rod-like projection. So this tunnel was not in use. So at that time I used this, but then I found a spare mirror in our lab, which was available. It was a very old mirror. That's why you can see some scratch marks and other things here. So yeah, there were some spare mirrors available, and the camera, whenever it was not in use, this is a high-speed camera, a very good high-speed camera, and whenever it was not in use, actually because of COVID, it was not in use most of the time. So I was able to make use of the facility. So in academia, actually, it may be a little easier because I don't know actually if a camera is available. Camera may be in high demand in IIST. So
No, but fine. I think this actually, it's a good thing. I think that, and it gives a favorable impression of ISRO culture. So if you were able to sort of do these experiments and get this work published, it actually, I think that means that ISRO actually provides enough flexibility for its staff to do interesting research work.
as long as your boss approves, as long as your division head approves of whatever work you're doing, and as long as you're showing that it is relevant, then it will be okay. That much I can tell, sir.
Yeah, to add to this, I have found a recent countdown, that is a House magazine. There is an article on when
Yes.
it will peak, when it will come down, some statistical analysis on the behavior of the disease now, COVID-19. So that also I have seen. There are such studies are also permitted, and they are taken up actually.
Yes, sir. As long as we are able to justify what we are doing and ensure that we are not wasting time or wasting
Yeah,
people's
yeah.
resources, it may be okay.
All right. So I guess there are no other on the other questions. So thank you, Padmanabh. This was, I mean, wonderful. I mean, it's very nice.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Padmanabh. Keep it up. Yeah.